Newsbreak, brought to you by National Mutual Financial Services.
Good evening, I'm Peter Hitchener. 2 men have been killed and another critically wounded in a shooting at an inner Sydney dance club this afternoon. Police say the shooting involved members of rival bikie gangs at the Black Market Cafe and Hellfire Club in Redfern. Police have been interviewing a man who's received hospital treatment, but say they cannot rule out the gunman is still at large. Residents of the inner Melbourne suburb of Fitzroy fear their area is falling victim to racial violence after an overnight brawl between members of 2 rival Turkish and Vietnamese groups. 2 people were injured. And police and federal agents have arrested 9 people and confiscated $14 million worth of heroin, which was intercepted in Adelaide. It's believed the drug was destined for Sydney. Prime Minister John Howard has urged monarchists and Republicans to work together on a working model for a republic. He says it's the most productive thing both sides can achieve at February's Constitutional Convention.
Prime Minister Howard doesn't want Australia to become a republic, but he does think voters should be given a choice. He says that's a job for the Constitutional Convention.
I think the convention should spend its time, both Republicans and non-Republicans alike, trying to reach agreement on the alternative to the present system.
Mr Howard says if Australians eventually vote for a republic, Parliament must pick the president.
I, for one, am violently and passionately opposed to an elected presidency.
But monarchists say they'll have nothing to do with any Republican model.
There is no compromise, no negotiation, and we will not tolerate any thoughts of any of the plethora of Republican models.
And the opposition says there's only one way the Prime Minister can win Labor's support.
If Mr Howard commits himself to pursuing the process of giving us an Australian head of state.
But tax reform is a more pressing issue for the Prime Minister. Confirming income tax cuts and a GST will be key parts of the package. He claims the changes will be almost revolutionary.
I and my Treasurer are now well into the process of preparing a detailed blueprint to turn the Australian taxation system on its head.
Fleur Bitcon, National 9 News.
2 Melbourne women have tricked Britain's wealthy equestrian set out of at least $7.3 million. London's Daily Mail newspaper says former brothel keepers Evelyn Burton and Leela Andre arrived in Britain last year after fleeing Australian police and underworld figures. The paper says the pair set themselves up as sponsors of the Royal Windsor Horse Show, but many of their victims are now too embarrassed to talk about it. A disturbing survey predicts food poisoning in Australia will worsen if home hygiene is not improved. With 2 million cases reported each year, a new safety campaign has been launched.
Case 1. The household cat licks butter left on the kitchen bench. Minutes later, the unsuspecting mother prepares school lunches using the same butter. This is only one of 40 scenarios filmed by surveillance cameras for the Food Safety Campaign Group.
What we found was a whole range of exercises which really were quite dangerous for their own particular health and those of their family.
Case 2. A man prepares a ham and salad sandwich and forgets to put the meat back in the fridge, leaving it out for 2 hours. Room temperature, the ideal breeding ground for bacteria. Case 3. A woman brushes her hair, then puts the brush on the chopping board. A personal hygiene mistake compounded by the fact she fails to wash her hands. Research shows 30% of meals are now eaten out, leading to people becoming less skilled at safe food preparation. This is backed up by the fact that 1 in 5 food poisoning cases happens in the home. Shari Armistead, National 9 News.
Tension continues to run high in the Middle East, where Iraq is again reported to have refused access to weapon sites for American UN inspectors. Thousands of Iraqis, meanwhile, have demonstrated their support of their leader Saddam Hussein. They crowded into the streets of Baghdad as Saddam refused to back away from his threat to shoot down American U-2 spy planes. And more than 100,000 people have packed a square in Tel Aviv to remember assassinated Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. Thousands of police and soldiers were mobilised to keep order and protect speakers, who called for peace and the preserving of Rabin's legacy. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was not invited. Cricket, and Australia has lost the wicket of captain Mark Taylor for just 16 to be 1 for 25 at stumps on the 3rd day of the first test in Brisbane. Earlier, New Zealand was bowled out for 349 in reply to Australia's first innings, 373. A brief look at the national weather now. Showers clearing from Adelaide, evening showers for Hobart, late storms for Melbourne, but fine in the other capitals. That's the news for now. Till I see you again, it's good night.
This has been a National 9 News presentation.